Step 1.
Take our tying thread, start it up at the eye of the hook, pull down on the bobbin and snap away the excess. Cover that hook shank with tying thread all the way down.
Step 2.
For the tail, I'm going to use some fibers from a partridge feather. Strip away the flue and fluff from the base of the feather and isolate an even section of the feather. Just strip away probably a dozen fibers is ample. You don't want to overdress the fly. You want to keep your flies nice and sparse and natural looking.
So by even, you mean in length?
Yeah, the tips are more or less all in the same, occupying the same area. And we're just going to bind those down. When you first tie them in, don't use too much thread pressure, as this tends to flare the tail. You can increase the thread pressure as you advance the thread forward and cover the butts to really securely put them in place so they don't pull out.
Step 3.
For the rib, we're going to use some fine copper wire. I'm going to bind that in place along the hook shank.
So on the top or the side?
It's on the top on this fly.
Step 4.
For the shellback and wing case, we're going to use some cock pheasant tail fibers. Strip them right off the stem of the feather and then tie them in by the tips. If we have a few fibers that don't want to play, we'll just remove them right out of the picture and trim the tips to ease the tying in process. We'll tie them in right at the base of the tail.
Step 5.
For the body, we're going to take 4 strands of peacock herl, tie them in by the tips. I've trimmed the last 1/4 to 3/8 of an inch of the tips as they're very brittle out of the way, and then bound them in place all the way down the hook shank. You can vary the number of peacock herl fibers used to suggest any number of nymph styles. Fat and robust for a dragonfly nymph, skinny and narrow for a mayfly. It's a very impressionistic pattern.
What do you mean by impressionistic?
Well, it's sort of generic and random in nature. Its overall look when it's done will suggest a wide variety of food size sources. You can just simply alter the size or the overall shape of the fly to imitate a wide variety of food sources.
Step 6.
I'm going to pull the turkey tail fibers over the back of the fly to form the shellback. I'm going to bind them in place.
Step 7.
Next, we're going to take our fine copper wire and using a nice open spiral, rib the body to give it a nice, neat, segmented look.
Is it also structural?
Yes, it does add reinforcement and also a bit of attractive flash and glitter as well. I'm going to wind that in front of the remaining pheasant tail fibers. And then break the wire. Breaking the wire saves your scissors.
Step 8.
I'm going to fold the remaining pheasant tail back over the body and bind them in place. This creates a nice tapered look to the fly where the abdomen disappears into the thorax.
Step 9.
For the legs, I'm going to take a partridge feather. I've chosen one with the fibers no longer than the length of the body. And we're going to tie this in place wet fly style right at the front of the fly, right up by the hook eye. And by wet fly style, I mean so that the concave side of the feather is facing upwards in this case. We'll bind that stem in place good and strong. And then trim away the excess.
Step 10.
For the thorax, I'm going to take 3 strands of peacock herl, tie them in by the tips. I can tie one less strand of herl in because I've built up some bulk in the thorax through the wing case material and tying in the legs. With the peacock herl in place, I'm just going to simply wind it forward in close touching turns up to the tying thread to form a nice neat thorax. Thorax should be slightly larger than the abdomen.
Step 11.
Now I'm going to take my partridge feather, take a half a turn, and then attach the hackle pliers at the bottom. This ensures the feather is positioned properly. And then using my thumb and forefinger, I'm going to sweep the individual fibers backward over the fly, helping it flow back along the body. About 2 to 3 wraps is fine. Usually all the partridge feather will allow. Then we're just going to tie it off and trim away the tip section.
What does this part of the fly imitate?
It suggests legs, movement, just animation, makes it look alive.
Step 12.
Now we're going to part the partridge so we can clear a path for the wing case, and using our thumb and forefinger, sweep those fibers down and back so that they encompass the bottom half of the fly.
Step 13.
Now going to pull our wing case over the top of the fly. Hold everything back out of the way so we can see the eye clearly. Place some securing wraps. Make sure that's in good and tight. And trim away the excess. Once the feather is tied off, we can build a neat head.
Step 14.
We're now going to take our whip finisher and use the whip finish to complete the head and secure the fly. The completed Fly Craft Fullback, my variation of the venerable fullback, a favorite pattern of mine when I'm plying new still waters, as it represents so many food sources, from dragonflies to scuds.